Once a celebrated professional footballer, Jason Pusey's fall from grace is nothing short of shocking. Sentenced to over 11 years in prison, Pusey was the mastermind behind a drug empire that funneled over £3 million worth of cocaine, ketamine, and cannabis onto the streets of London. Operating as a wholesale supplier to dangerous criminal gangs, he became one of the most elusive and cunning drug dealers of recent years. But how did a man who once lived under the spotlight slip into the shadows of crime? Jason Pusey pleaded guilty early in his trial for his plans to flood London's streets with illegal drugs. He was not just a dealer distributing in South London, but had connections with more dangerous international criminals in the underworld. Jason's time in football exposed him to influential acquaintances with criminal ties, whose allure of wealth eventually pulled him into the world of organized crime. The quantities of drugs he supplied might be speculative, as we can only go by what evidence is present from the findings. Even though he wasn't at the top of the criminal organization, his role contributed to the violence and the number of deaths these illegal drugs bring to the communities they're distributed in. Jason Pusey grew up in Gibraltar, an overseas British territory on the southern tip of the Iberian Peninsula. Unlike many gangsters, Jason didn't grow up on the streets where he was destined to become a hardened criminal. He had a different path that would lead him to his life of crime. His early life was filled with only dreams of becoming a professional football player, a dream which seemed possible when he left Gibraltar in 2005 to join the youth academy of one of Europe's top teams in Spain. Not Real Madrid, but one of their rivals, Atlético Madrid. Having spent just 2 years at Atlético, he was released in 2007 after failing to live up to the promise he showed in the early years before they signed him. He was welcomed at Cadiz, signing for their B team, a tenure which lasted only 1 season before playing 2 seasons at Atlético Zabal, which would be a move that was taking him in the opposite direction he was aiming for. In 2010, he left Zabal and moved to the UK to take a break from football and do some studies in the hope of getting a college degree and maybe go corporate or learn a skill that would supply an income for him and his future family. This part of his life also lasted around 2 years because Jason's mounting financial pressures and sense of lost potential led him to consider darker paths, drawn by the allure of quick cash and the desire to regain a semblance of the status he had once known. In 2012, he returned home to sign for Lions Gibraltar and play in the Gibraltar Football League. Here he was a regular starter, but that didn't help the team from finishing 5th in a league that has only 6 teams. After that season, he got hope again when the Gibraltar Football Federation finally got accepted into UEFA, which is the governing body of European football. This allowed them funding to expand the league to 8 teams. Jason moved to Glasses United, another bottom-of-the-table team in Gibraltar, where again he finished 5th in the league. He moved again, but this time to the league's second-place team, Manchester 62, in the Football League. Over 2 seasons at Manchester 62, he made only 7 appearances. He got another chance at football again when he helped Gibraltar United avoid relegation with some good performances that saw him getting rewarded with a call-up for the Gibraltar national team. Jason would go on to make only 4 appearances for the team. The height of his football career would have been sitting on the bench for Lincoln FC when they played in the Europa League and lifting the Pepe Reyes Cup, which is a knockout tournament in Gibraltar. So how does a lowly footballer from Gibraltar get sentenced to prison after being investigated in one of the largest investigations in Europe, growing up in Gibraltar, where the community is tight-knit and everyone knows each other? Becoming a drug dealer isn't just about breaking the law, it is seen as a breach of trust with neighbors, friends, and even family. In a place where reputation is everything, it's not ideal because in such a small, interconnected environment, getting involved in drug dealing puts everything on the line: your family's standing, lifelong relationships, and the respect of your community. The speculation is that after his failed football career, Jason was living a life that was above his means, and his family and friends didn't know what he was doing to supplement his income. They all thought he was just a successful footballer making an honest living. Jason's desperation to escape the disappointment of his failed career, coupled with the influence of friends from his football days who had turned to crime, ultimately drove him toward the underworld. But that all came crashing down after authorities launched a massive investigation into the European underground, where the criminals migrated their means of communication to the encrypted platform EncroChat. Operating on customized Android phones, it provided secure messaging capabilities that were believed to be untraceable by law enforcement. The service offered features like self-destructing messages and PIN codes to wipe the device's data instantly, ensuring maximum privacy for its users. In 2020, European law enforcement agencies, including the UK's National Crime Agency and French and Dutch authorities, managed to infiltrate EncroChat servers. They were able to access millions of messages in real time, exposing a vast array of criminal activities activities ranging from drug trafficking to violent crimes. The operation led to thousands of arrests and the seizure of significant quantities of illegal goods, cash, and weapons. This unprecedented breach dismantled numerous criminal organizations that had relied on EncroChat's promised anonymity. For individuals like Jason, who conducted their illicit dealings via EncroChat, this breach was catastrophic. It provided law enforcement with concrete evidence of their criminal activities, leading to arrests and convictions that might not have been possible otherwise. The EncroChat bust marked a turning point in the fight against organized crime, demonstrating that no communication system is entirely beyond the reach of determined authorities. Jason conducted his drug dealings on EncroChat under the alias Irregular Fog, one of the many weird usernames that authorities would come across on the platform. Even though the platform was known to be secure and offer privacy and exclusivity for these criminals, the evidence found on these devices showed that even though he wasn't a drug kingpin, he was involved in the logistics of a larger-scale drug operation. The drugs he moved were estimated to be around £3 million. The scale of his activities and the monetary value involved show he was far more than just a street-level dealer. He was dealing in amounts that impacted entire communities. Prosecutors during his trial considered Jason to be an influential figure in the supply chain, linking him to organized crime operations that funneled large quantities of drugs into South London. This had devastating effects on communities, contributing to violence, addiction, and the chaos associated with the illegal drug trade. He was essentially a wholesale supplier, arranging for large quantities of drugs to be moved to criminal groups. His position in the chain was significant, but there's no evidence to suggest he controlled a wide-ranging drug empire with numerous dealers directly reporting to him, which is what might typically be considered a kingpin. Pusey orchestrated drug deals involving hundreds of kilograms of narcotics, including 107 kilos of cocaine, 235 kilos of ketamine, and 447 kilos of cannabis. This amount of drugs translates to millions of pounds worth of street value, indicating that he operated at a substantial level. Using the cover of football and the humbleness of the modest town he lived in, he flew under the radar of authorities. If it wasn't for the EncroChat bust, Jason would probably still be dealing up to this day. Jason was arrested in his home in Market Weighton, York, on June 20th, 2023. This town, which is described as a charming small market town, is not used to seeing large groups of police officers raiding properties unless it's on the TV. However, this is where Jason Lee Pusey was arrested, and more physical evidence was found at his premises. The police didn't disclose this information, as the EncroChat investigation is still ongoing, and more gangsters and dealers are being convicted as this video is being made. Not much is known about Jason's family, as he wasn't extremely active on social media, only posting about football and his support for Manchester United in England, and one post expressing his love for a woman whom he tagged on Twitter. One thing is for sure, Jason did try to be a professional footballer to make ends meet, but he fell behind on the pitch and never recovered. He tried school and didn't follow through with that either, and ended up becoming a victim to the lure of fast cash, power, and connections to the underworld. There are a lot more like Jason to be covered, so if you like this type of content, please subscribe and share this video. Until next time, be safe.